So to take this, that's basically the background of Ubuntu, as much of it as I'm going to go into from a technical point of view. But because I want to talk to you a little bit about Ubuntu as a leadership opportunity from a point of view of our, I guess, our work or environments and what it is we do, or most of us do on a daily basis. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll talk a little bit about the implications and maybe how to take this essence of Ubuntu into the workplace. So one of the readings that I looked up as I prepared for this chat is, which I'm quoting above here, is managerial success values things such as collectiveness, solidarity, acceptance, dignity, and hospitality. So the values for a good manager need to be things such as collectiveness, acting collectively, okay, solidarity, sticking by each other, teamwork in some way, accepting diversity, showing dignity, and showing hospitality, as Nelson Mandela was once quoted as saying. So as a manager, the essence of Ubuntu are some of the things that we need to adopt and make sure that we practice on a daily basis. In particular, in times like these, where we've been forced to work, a lot of us from home, where technology issues and challenges are coming up, where people's living conditions are different to each other. And so it's really important at times like these, where we stick by each other and we have tolerance for each other's working conditions, and to collectively then define what it is that we can achieve together, so that we're taking into account each other's conditions and being vulnerable both as a leader and as a staff member, and working together, because we're all on this boat together, right? We're all in the same situation. We're all feeling the same anxiety, the same issues, and the same challenges. So Ubuntu captures this this essence of this collective us, and helps us to use those principles and values together. All right. And the reason that I've got this beehive on the screen is that the leadership opportunity at the moment is really, that I see, is radical collaboration. Okay, radical collaboration in the sense that, are we able to collaborate better across the boundaries within our organization, the silos, the functional areas? Are we able to collaborate better beyond the boundaries of our organization with our, maybe even our competitors? And so I use this example of how in nature, potential enemies form allegiances, different hives of bees all work together to pollinate the flowers, so that there's a continuation of their food source, right? And you know, there are examples of that where organizations such as Microsoft and Apple on many occasions have collaborated, even though they have competing brands. They still collaborate together, and at times like these, we have opportunity to lead through collaboration, to jointly define and set a common purpose, to be more human perhaps, and to create, and what does that mean? That means to create impact in society, perhaps by using principles of our interconnectedness, of our joint community that we live in, and how can we make for a more balanced society, a more balanced way of interacting with nature, of interacting with each other, instead of perhaps going at all costs to drive growth. Is that the right question that we should be asking ourselves? Or should we be saying, how can we make sure that everybody has water? How can we make sure that everybody has enough food? How can we make sure that there's more equality on this planet? And so I'd like to ask you all, maybe in the chat now. I see there's already 21 comments, but I'm not watching them at all, so that I stay focused on this talk. But my colleagues are paying close attention, just so that you know. So I'd like to ask all of you, what inhibits Ubuntu in our various cultures? What do you think inhibits those values that I spoke about right at the beginning of this presentation? What inhibits people from being hospitable? What inhibits people from working better together? What inhibits people on being focused on being more human? Why are we not more human across our various cultures? Let me see. I'll give you around 30 seconds to engage with that question. So I'm seeing things like insecurity, obsession with profits, sense of power, emotions, egos. Yes. Some people think they are immortal. Oh, wow. Yeah, we're going to come back in a new life, but can that be an advantage? Maybe we can come back and do better things, work on our legacy. People have different moral values. Yes. It's an interesting one. Kinjal says humanity. Our humanity prevents us from being human. I wonder what he means. Culture. Culture is sometimes prevented. People work in different ways. Procrastination. Pride. Yes, I saw fear. It's come up quite a few times. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. Here's some of the examples that I think were already listed there. So silos in organizations, which is ultimately that where collaboration perhaps is missing across the various disciplines. Monopolistic behavior by organizations. Ego, as someone said earlier, and being selfish. A focus on profit at all costs, without looking at the sustainability of our activities as an organization. Withholding critical information. So if we don't share information that's important, well, that could result in us being less human. And perceived scarcity of resources. So how do we behave if we think that there's a shortage of resources, or we hold them to ourselves and we don't share and we don't create? And I can say that often when traveling in Africa, if you jump on a bus, the person next to you who may be eating some food, they'll share their food with you, even though they may be really poor. It's in their nature just to share, even though they have very little. I've traveled in Africa in some really poor places, and the people there were always welcoming, would make a cup of tea, and invite you into their home and be hospitable. So it really is something prevalent in society, and that somehow this drive for profits, for growth, I think somehow we do seem to forget this act of being human. So what outcome might emerge from human-driven leadership? Okay, and I thought, let me just give you 3 examples. The first would be unity of purpose. Okay, for example, the Millennium Goals. I already mentioned the African 2063 vision, and you'll know that the Millennium Goals incorporates a lot of what it means to be human. They've been set up to create a more equitable society. So if we were all focused, as all our cultures and countries around the world, if we were all focused on a common purpose of establishing and entrenching the Millennium Goals and succeeding to achieve them, perhaps we would have a more equitable society. What else? Well, radical collaboration. I did speak about it earlier, and Radical collaboration is really working together, sharing resources, and jointly removing impediments to success. So if we all worked together, for example, on the Millennium Goals, we could achieve the goals and form better camaraderie together. So I think that's really important. Being able to break down the barriers or build bridges between the silos across countries, across organizations, to work better together towards a more healthy society, which is the third point that I raised, contributing to a healthier, more tolerant society. So by adopting the principles of Ubuntu, we may be able to contribute to this harmonious society, to some sort of homeostasis. I used the analogy of ecosystem earlier. How can we create a more healthy ecosystem where sharing and helping homeless people becomes the norm as opposed to the exception? So a quick quote. If the rhythm of the drum beat changes, the dance steps must adapt. Okay, it's a Kenyan proverb. And I guess we're in a period, an opportunity, a window of opportunity where we can all adapt and change right now, where we've all been asked to stay at home, to travel less, to think about how we operate, how we do things. What are we going to do different? How can we pivot our business models, for example? How can we pivot the way we do things? So we've all been probably asking ourselves, what are things we can do new? What can we do differently? And what I love about this quote is that it talks about a rhythm. So what new rhythm can we get into? What flow can we get into in terms of being more human? You may not recognize the man on your screen at the moment. His name is Cyril Ramaphosa, and he's the president of South Africa. He's the third president since Nelson Mandela. And he really conducted himself well during COVID-19. He's been very open to the views of various quarters. He's consulted with many experts. And he really has helped prevent the spread of COVID-19 in South Africa, where he did that really well. On the other side, he's been struggling to balance the economy. So our economy is struggling a little now as a result of saving those lives and preventing the spread of COVID-19. But South Africa forms part of the BRICS, which I'm sure all of you know, because India is the I within the BRICS, South Africa being the S. And at a conference, I think 2 years ago, he said, we should not allow technology to shape our society. We must instead ensure the needs of our societies shape the technologies that we develop. Okay. The needs of our society shape the technology that we develop. Another famous man has been quoted as saying that. His name is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was quoted as saying that the technology should not drive the offering. The needs of the customer should drive the technology. So 2 wise men have said this. What does it mean then to understand the needs of the customer? Well, it starts with empathy. But the heading that I have on the slide is about the future of work. So how can we take this thing, Ubuntu, and make it practical in the work environment? And one of the things that stood out for me as I thought about this presentation that I'm doing to you was human skills. The future of work is going to change radically with COVID-19. We're in this for the long haul, and already probably many of you are noting that many more people are working from home, and working from home has many advantages, right? We avoid the commute, avoid putting pollution in the air, avoid the dangers of travel, and avoiding time wastage. So there are many positives to this working from home, but we need to be able to support people with everything that's happening in the world. Working from home means technology needs to work. Working from home means we still need to stay interconnected. We're, looking at each other through screens is difficult. It's difficult to look at each other through masks, and it's the same with the screen. You don't see body language. Perhaps you can't notice, but I have my arms folded right now. It's a little bit chilly in the air. So it's difficult to connect to people via a screen. How do we stay interconnected in this remote working paradigm that we're moving into? What skills will people need with technology taking over the way we work? So 3 things stood out for Cyril Ramaphosa when he did this speech 2 years ago. Problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. And he said that without adequate training, only a few emerging economies will possess these skills in sufficient numbers, while others will see their prospects stifled by automation. So with automation, with artificial intelligence, with blockchain and all of this technology that's probably going to grow at a rate of knots, how do we stay interconnected? Well, from an organization point of view, I think that we need to be thinking about education. How do we keep people's skills relevant? What skills are relevant? And this slide really just talks about, as we move through big data, robotics, and the Internet of Things, the 4th Industrial Revolution, we're slowly going to move into the 5th Industrial Revolution. The 5th Industrial Revolution being more connected through innovation, through purpose, and through inclusivity. So this particular slide was presented at Davos by an organization called the Fifth Element on the 16th of May last year, where they said that in the 5th Industrial Revolution, humans and machines will dance together metaphorically, right? So this magic that can be created with technology needs to be done mindfully, needs to be done with human principles in mind, because we don't want to be taken over by machines. We still are humans. We still need to retain our humanity. We still need to be able to talk to each other, to see each other, to understand each other's emotions. Even MIT, Forbes, and Tata, which is an Indian company, set the following theme at Davos: blockchain plus AI plus human equals magic. But don't forget the H, right? H to H. People talk about B2B and B2C, business to business and business to consumer. Well, what about human to human? How do we stay more human? How do we make sure that we keep the human essence, those needs that human beings have to act as a collective, to be in a community? And how do we make sure that we make that happen? What skills are needed and what frameworks can help us, okay, to create that magic? Well, we need to tap into the essence of creativity. We need to tap into the technology, but effectively we should look at our employees first. Who are our employees and what are our employee needs? We need to give employees the workspace they want, the tools they need, and a culture that they can celebrate. Because most of you have probably heard of this age-old adage: if we have connected or happy staff, we should have happy clients. Okay, so given all of the change that's going on, given this move towards artificial intelligence and efficiency and working from home, creativity is part of the essence of being human as well. It's a skill set. It's a skill set that your staff are going to need moving forward. And my challenge to you would be to say, how will you make sure that in this time of radical change, you can make sure that your staff have the skills needed to cope with the future? Thinking of them, thinking of their needs. Using Ubuntu as a way to connect to the needs of your staff, so that with engaged, happy, and focused staff who feel part of a community, they can then better understand their clients and their clients' needs and help adapt the organization for the future. Looking at staff to adapt the organization for the future, because who else is going to do it? Without this notion of interconnectedness of staff, interconnectedness of staff with the customer, how are we going to adapt? Because we need to understand our customers' needs and we need to understand our staff needs in order to create the conditions for success, okay, as managers and as leaders, which is a matter of blending the technology with the essence of being human. Okay, so creating an appropriate employee experience with technology, but with the workforce that we have. Okay, putting us all on the same level, and giving people the autonomy to bring about positive change. Autonomy, I think, is an important word to use when you are looking at having to reinvent, because reinvention takes time, it takes understanding what to do, why to do it, and how to do it. And if we don't start with our staff and giving them the permission to bring about positive change, who else is going to do it? That's the question I'll leave you with. So a few more slides to wrap up, and then we'll go into a Q&A. Launch. So the heading on this slide is capture the essence of Ubuntu with design thinking. Okay, so we are a design thinking based organization. We believe that design has the power to bring about positive change using a multidisciplinary team as the catalyst for change, to catalyze change within an organization, using diversity to catalyze change within an organization. So if we feel that we need to adapt, we feel we need to pivot, if the change that is taking place is causing us to be disrupted, and if we're not working as effectively as we were, we need to launch a project. Right, that's the start. If we decide we need to launch a project, then that project needs to have meaning. And by meaning, I'm saying meaning for society, meaning for the people that will be part of the project, but it also needs to have a strong vision, a vision to bring about positive change that has a potential impact for society. Okay, I think that's a problem worth solving, a project that will have a potential impact for society. Organizations that are successful today often understand the needs of society, help create better conditions for society. Organizations like Facebook, like Google, have all created better conditions for society. Some of them in a monopolistic way, which I'm not a fan of, because I don't think that there's as much sharing that could take place. But the one thing they do get right, these big, large, successful organizations like Apple, is they understand human needs. They are connected to their customer, and they use design as a process to do that. So design thinking, in many ways, does capture the essence of Ubuntu. And design thinking ultimately becomes a project. It becomes a way of doing. And the second bullet is around embracing diversity and people's strengths. So in order to bring about positive change, we need diversity. We need diversity to sweep in the complexity of the world around us, okay, both from a discipline point of view, but also from a demographics point of view. We need multiple elements of diversity within an organization to understand the complexity that's outside the organization. And design thinking is an outside-in framework. It's saying use your staff and collaborators to better understand the outside world and the needs of humanity, right? And so when you do a design thinking project, we want to make sure that we set up a diverse team that's going to work on this vision, this new possibility, this new world, this new opportunity that the organization wants to approach, right? Using people's strengths, because we need the breadth of knowledge and the depth of discipline. We talk about T-shaped people, right? T-shaped people help us to understand better or a T-shaped profile is having a broad sense of knowledge, but also a deep sense of discipline. And by having T-shaped people on a team, we end up with a T-shaped team, which is a broad, multidisciplinary team. And so what do we do once we've launched this project? Well, the starting point is we need to connect to people's needs by understanding their emotions and their preferred outcomes. And empathy lies at the heart of that. So when one launches into a design thinking project, one starts with empathy. One starts to understand what people are feeling, what are their emotions, what are their issues, what are their challenges, what are their pain points. And that is about being open to people's needs and not being arrogant, not having an ego, not having a soul and focus only on profit, but on how might we help people? How can we create value, right? Create value for society. So that's the fourth bullet. Co-create value for people and involve them in the solution design. When you get to the point where we're going to focus on a particular problem, choose that problem, having done the research and having chosen a problem worth solving, then we need to co-create solutions with our community. Get buy-in by co-creating with the community. Make them part of the process. This is also useful because it helps de-risk the process, but it makes people feel involved, right? And that's a principle of Ubuntu. Make people feel welcome. Show good hospitality. Involve them in the design process so they're part of the solution. That way, we can bring about positive change. And lastly, and probably most importantly, build a culture of enjoyment, creativity, and learning in your organization, as opposed to a culture of fear. Create a hospitable environment for people to experiment, to try new things, and to learn. Because effectively, design thinking is a framework for learning. Learning what works for people, to meet people's needs. It has empathy at the heart of it. So just in closing, our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. Mahatma Gandhi, a man South Africans knew very well. And I think that he understood the essence of Ubuntu. Well, we can see that by this quote. So I'd like to thank all of you for giving me the space to share my viewpoints with you. And I'm looking forward to engaging with you further for the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. This was absolutely incredible. Thank you. I think this has been very thought-provoking. I think it kind of has set everyone off on a reflective mode. So thank you for doing this. I think this has been incredible. It's almost like having attended a spiritual session. I must tell you that, because it kind of evokes very sort of deep thought and gets you to ask some very fundamental questions, which all of us are all collectively from, if you look at the flow of comments in the chat box, I mean, we're all collectively seeking answers to these questions. So I think at this stage, I'm just going to pull Daryl in, and we're going to have a go at the chat with you first before we allow the audience to get access to you. So Daryl, I'll try and bring you in here.
Thank you, Dr. Sujaya. Robert, you are as inspiring as ever. Thank you very much for that whole presentation on Ubuntu. Actually, immediately, I've seen quite a number of comments coming from the people around. And one of the questions I have, Ubuntu, one of this saying of Ubuntu is that we are because of others, right? I mean, the question is, does this concept of Ubuntu really resonate in this competitive business world, where it's very difficult now for us to kind of remain, I mean, difficult for it to be relevant? Is it difficult to be relevant?
Okay. Is it relevant in this world, firstly?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about teamwork. I alluded to it a little bit earlier. Richard Branson has been quoted as saying, if we need to put our staff first and the rest will come. So by creating the conditions for staff to operate in a harmonious way, to be happy at work, to care about things, to be working on things they care about, and to create the possibility for that, we'll have engaged staff. And so, yes, I mean, I really do believe that. I really do believe it's relevant. And what is relevance? Relevance is being able to adapt to a shifting world, a complex world. So all organizations have to be relevant. If we're not relevant to what our staff and to our communities that we serve, we will be rendered a void, right? Nokia, Kodak, those companies that weren't able to adapt disappeared because they weren't relevant, and they weren't open to change, and so they weren't listening, they weren't learning, and they weren't adapting. So relevance is about listening, learning, and adapting.
So I think, Robert, at this stage, I'm going to try and attempt making a connection between design thinking and the Ubuntu, sort of philosophy. And what I'm getting is that, you're perhaps trying to tell us that the Ubuntu philosophy allows you to go beyond revenue, beyond milking value, and it allows you to be able to kind of truly, and expansively use design thinking to be able to find real solutions to real human problems. So tell us a bit more about this. I'm just trying to get your response. Is this connection what it is that we're trying to say, which is that seek a much larger world, a more expansive world, go beyond revenues, go beyond, being in search of milking value, which is often the reason why organizations embark on design thinking. So I'm just trying to get a connection between the philosophy and why you even start looking at design thinking as a possible solution for what your organization may want to do. I'll talk more about innovation in a bit, because that's another buzzword. There's more lip service than anything else to innovation. I mean, there's not a single organization that is not saying already that they're committed to innovation. So we'll come to the innovation part later. I'm just trying to make a connection between design thinking and the Ubuntu philosophy. Yeah,
okay. So I want to be clear that I think that Ubuntu does, as a philosophy, is about value. It's not necessarily about profit, but about value. So what is value from a human point of view? Showing people that you care, showing them hospitality, showing them that you understand or empathize with them. So that can be value for people, to feel valued, right? Studies have been done that a lot of the time people don't only go to work. Well, number one is not just for the money, it's to get recognition. So this is about empathy. This is about making sure that people feel that they have a purpose, that they are part of something worth doing. And that's the future of work. Millennials, I don't like to use stereotypes, but millennials are changing the nature of work, the way work will be conducted, and of course COVID has contributed to that. So creating value is very important, and value is not just necessarily from a profit point of view. So I think I want to make that clear. Then how does design thinking help us do that? So taking the essence of empathy, which is a principle within Ubuntu, but it's also a principle and an activity within design thinking. It's a capability. Empathy is a capability. It's a muscle that you can grow and strengthen. So design thinking projects, which are usually structured in a learning by doing manner, help to develop the competency or the capability to better understand people and their needs. Their needs being, what is value for them? What are the things they're trying to do and achieve? And we often ask the question in a design thinking project, what's preventing them? So by taking this Ubuntu concept of empathy, which coincidentally lies within the heart of design thinking, we're then able to find out what value is for our customers. And in this way, and potentially new customers, let me say that for customers, both current and prospective, And by doing that, we can grow our market, we can grow our communities, and we can add value. And of course, we all know that there are many business models which have free as a business model, particularly in IT. In fact, there's a platform that competes with Windows and Apple out there called Ubuntu, that was actually set up by Mark Shuttleworth. He's a really famous guy because he was one of the first people ever to go into space, private individuals who paid to go into space. Mark Shuttleworth, South African. And he created a free platform called Ubuntu. You can look it up.
Yes, it's there. Yeah.
And that whole principle is offering the tools for people to get their jobs done for free. So it captures the
essence, yeah.
Itself captures the essence of Ubuntu.
Yeah. Lovely. I think I want to at this point, involve the audience in an audience poll, Daryl, with your permission. Yeah.
Yes,
so I'm going to go into our very first, audience poll. Sunita, you ready? Can we ask the first question to the audience, which is, we're going to ask you this, and we did see some comments on the chat box, but we want to know what you feel about this question. And the question is, Sunita, have the question up, please. All right. We are because of others. Does this resonate in a competitive business world where increasingly it is difficult to remain relevant? We are because of others. I mean, it really sounds profound, and, I think we also seek a world like this. And the question to you is, does this resonate in a competitive business world where increasingly it has become difficult to remain relevant? So want some honest responses here. So notwithstanding that this was extremely inspiring, everything that Robert had to share, when it really comes to, what is your sense? Yeah, does this resonate? Does it seem like possible at all? Where that most people seem, Daryl, go ahead. Yeah.
No, if I could just cut in a while ago when Robert was talking about value, and everyone, I mean, when we were asking what were some of the obstacles that kind of impedes Ubuntu from happening, right, a while ago, there were lots and lots of very meaningful insights. I mean, now and there was one that also mentioned that Ubuntu is really much more relevant during this time. I think a question that was just asked. So then I also read Dr. Rao, and that was from Dr. Rao, if I'm not wrong. I'm thinking right now, it is possibly the way how do we frame what is value, right? We always base our value on very limited resources like time, money, space. But I think there are many, many other values that can be created, right, Robert?
There are many ways to set up creativity. We from a creative leadership point of view, we often run a training in that regard to help teams think about the conditions necessary to set up this creativity. And creativity is not just being an artist. An artist can come up with a beautiful diagram, but creativity can be nurtured. And also, obviously, everybody has an element of creativity within them, whether it's working creatively with spreadsheets or creatively in your specific field. You can get creative dentists, for example. So, I mean, obviously, you don't want to have too many creative accountants because it could get dangerous. But I think the point being that creating value is about creating new concepts, and it will go to Sujaya's point around innovation. What is a prerequisite to an innovation is a creative idea. But a creative idea that's lying on the table isn't anything until it's implemented. Organizations that show strong implementation capability are very innovative. First, we need the ideas. That's the art of being creative. Then we need the ability to implement. So design thinking helps us to come up with new and creative ideas, novel ideas, unique ideas, right? That we then as an organization need to harness and implement for our communities. And some of that may be to create free things to build up our community so that somewhere down the line we can monetize. But first and foremost, we have to focus on desirability. What do people need? Because we don't want to start the other way around. As Steve Jobs said, as Cyril Ramaphosa said, we don't want to start with the technology. We want to start with the need, understand the need, come up with an idea for that need, and then learn to implement it.
You're right. I'm just going to bring this back to, I'm just going to bring this back to Mother Earth a bit by being able to put down, in a world where we see toxic energies within organizations, in a world where we see pettiness galore, in a world where a lot of people are experiencing affordability for the first time and do not know any other way. Dr. Rao posted on the chat earlier saying that, especially developing economies, the default mechanism is competitiveness. I'm just trying to figure out how much does this resonate? I mean, does this sound like tall talk, or does it look like something that is eminently doable, and whether COVID-19 is going to be an accelerator for us to be able to start thinking differently? So do take 30 seconds to be able to respond to this. We are because of others. Does this resonate in a competitive business world where increasingly it is difficult to remain relevant? So yes, no, and let's try and get the responses up, Suneet. You're right, this is encouraging, all right, that you're saying that does this resonate? And we're still saying it resonates, which is like so hopeful. We still have about a staggering almost 25% saying that, sounds really good, but I don't know how we're going to do this because the whole spirit is so competitive. It's kind of difficult to say that we are because of the other. And I think this is very reflective of the cultures that we typically see, at least in Indian organizations, where practically all are struggling with collaboration and have almost undoubtedly unanimously seen a heightened level of collaboration through the COVID-19 lockdown, and thereafter as the organizations are building back to be able to work towards the resurgence. There are some incredible stories of collaboration that have emerged in a crisis. So it looks like when back against the wall, there is the spirit to be able to collaborate. Doesn't come easy. And I saw a lot of comments, even as you were presenting, where people spoke about the default behavior is competitiveness. And we did talk about it yesterday, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm going to...
If I may there, I mean, just 2 points. The first point that I raised earlier already was this notion of radical collaboration, even across competitors. And, I gave the example of Microsoft that has collaborated with Apple, how in nature, potential competitors are collaborating to ensure the sustainability of their species and of their food sources. So, I mean, just look at the example where restaurants will all group together. They're competing for someone to walk in to their restaurant, right? But they all put their restaurants in the same place. So there's this notion of competitiveness that's needed to differentiate, right? So you want to differentiate, but you still want accessibility easy. So you're going to compete, but you're going to compete in a friendly way by being in the same neighborhood, so that people can all get to your restaurants and know where to go, and then choose, right? Because choice is important to the customer. The restaurants understand that choice is important, and that one night the customer may go to the pizza Italian restaurant, for example, and the next night they may go to the Indian restaurant. But the important thing is to put these create these areas, and that is basically collaborating radically.
Right. And I think I'm seeing a lot of people on the group also resonate with the fact that they have seen collaboration work, even as people compete with each other. So among competitors, forms of collaboration that seem to work. I'm going to ask you, a question that is, and I'm, like I said, we're going to try and grab your attention first before we let the audience get to you. And I think one of the things that is been bothering me through your conversation is that, we're all trapped with the world in the way in which we receive it, which is each of us are trapped in our own worldview and our own ability to be able to connect up the dots, to be able to understand the world as we see it. So I think one of the very empowering thoughts through the Ubuntu philosophy is that, you can actually experience a far, far more expansive world if you kind of experience this kind of level of interconnectedness. So even when you pursue or you go out in search of being able to find new ideas or new solutions, you kind of, it kind of expands your world in a way. And I want to understand from you whether, this expansiveness can lead to reinventing of the business model itself. Maybe you realize that the questions you're asking itself need to undergo a significant change. Is that what you see organizations that adopt this philosophy experience, which is a significant reinvention of the business model itself as a result of the expansiveness that they're bringing to their thinking.
So I'm going to maybe again use the analogy around ecosystem thinking, and connect that to what we call value exchange at Design Thinkers. So we have sort of an obsession towards value. While it's important to understand people's emotional experiences and to meet those experiences along the way, we still need to make sure that we help them achieve their goal or their preferred outcome, which is their ultimate measure of value. So in other words, if you want to, what is the reason that you store money in your bank? You store money because you want it to be safe. If your money gets stolen, they've failed. And you want them to generate interest to create value for you. And if they don't generate a positive interest for you, they've failed the game. So first and foremost, banks need to do the basic things right. And then they start looking at the experience. Now, if we're trying to be adaptive in our business model, we need to be aware of what's going on. What are the forces that are disrupting us? And how might we, as an organization, make sure we better understand these trends, the needs of the market as they're shifting, and adapt? Well, we need to work collaboratively. We need to create a value exchange between our competitors and us. We need to look at what would create value in this ecosystem. And we're already seeing a lot of banks embracing the notion of blockchain. We're already seeing banks looking at new services that they can offer. Some of our clients here in South Africa that are, for example, in logistics, they're looking at new ways because we don't have tourists coming to South Africa at the moment. So Avis has got like hundreds of cars sitting in parking lots at the moment that aren't generating revenue for them. So what can they do to pivot their business model? Well, they have to build an ecosystem, a new ecosystem, work with partners, potentially even competitors, to look at new business models that can help them meet the needs of the market, but also to sweat their assets, of course, because otherwise they will become irrelevant, as did Kodak, as did Nokia. So this notion of value exchange is a critical element. It's not just about creating value for the customer, because if we do so solely without eventually looking at the feasibility and the viability of the solutions, where we can get into big trouble as an organization. So there needs to be a logical approach around what we call feasibility and viability. And where feasibility, viability, and desirability intersect, picture a Venn diagram of 3 circles. Where those 3 circles intersect, that is where innovation happens. Okay, but we need to do so as a group of stakeholders. We need to work collaboratively to provide the value. We no longer can just work alone in an environment. We need to see the environment, understand the holistic nature of how the environment works, who are the players in the environment, who can we collaborate with in order to provide a value chain, right? So think value chain. How do we make sure we create a value chain for our customers that will make them want to come back and back again and again for our service, and will want to then share that experience with their friends, so that we grow our ecosystem. But we must think ecosystem.
If I may ask, sorry, Robert, if I may ask, I mean, before we go into creating value and creating the value chains, I think the question I want to ask you first and foremost, I mean, because also looking at the Q&A, there are some questions about what would be the simplest way for us to be able to discover value. Or as a leader, how can we even start to discover and find out what these values are? What would be the first step for a leader, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important part of engaging with the outside world. If we're inward looking or navel gazing, right, we're not going to see those needs. We won't understand them. So we need to have a part of our organization that is obsessed with the customer needs, with the customer service, with the customer experience, with the shifting nature of the broader marketplace in itself. And without that focus for the outside world, we will implode internally. We will no longer shift and adapt. So the first place to start is having everybody talking to customers within the organization, listening to customers, and accumulating those needs, capturing those needs. What do people need? That is where value lies. Value lies between in an unmet need. Where a need is being unmet, people are no longer achieving what they should be. So we must make sure that we find those unmet needs and shift our services towards those, so that we are adding value to society and to communities, and building those communities and making people part of those communities, so that it resonates with them. And of course, it's not just that. It's also the way in which we do that. We need to do that sustainably. As I mentioned earlier, everybody is looking at how we operate as an organization. Are we operating ethically? Are we operating sustainably as an organization? Because if we're just using up resources and not contributing back to the world, to society, to the natural world, then we could be in big trouble. And so I think that Ubuntu helps with that from a point of view of a corporate social investment responsibility, and also from a sustainability point of view, that we need to be making sure that we capture the essence of those needs, as well as just the needs of how it is that we do eventually make money, that we are giving back to society and making a difference in the world.
I like the way we brought up the capturing of needs, and we always end up with that value being money. While ideally speaking, a lot of organizations we see tend to say, oh, we look to discover some of these really intrinsic needs of these individuals, what really drives them, what are some of the pain points. But ultimately, it falls back onto this whole pursuit of, do we really want to empathize with the customer? Well, there is a poll that we kind of want to put up. And I think this is something that I really want to ask people. So Sunif, can you put up the poll? So the question goes, do you believe that the authentic pursuit of this human, yeah, here we go. Do you believe that the authentic pursuit of this human connectedness is what will get you to empathize with the customer? So let's see how that's going. I'm trying to imagine what people are really looking out for, especially when in our organizations, whenever we sit down and ask ourselves, well, the company is facing this problem right now. Let's sit down and discuss about the problem. What is really the needs? Oh, you know, and how much time do we spend on that? And do we authentically really go and discover?
So Daryl, this is a very interesting question, because in effect, what you're asking there is how, it goes back to Sujaya's question, how do we co-create value together? That's actually what you're asking. How do we co-create value with the customer? With the customer, that's what you've used. So empathizing with the customer is one step, but the second step is co-creating value with them, allowing them to be part of the design process, prototyping, building concepts together with the customer. If the customer is part of your design process and that you've engaged with them, now you are authentically pursuing a way of connecting to your customer, involving them in the process, helping them to share their needs. And as you grow with your customer, think of lifetime value. Think about having a customer for their lifetime. If you're a bank, if you're a car manufacturer, you want people to stay and be loyal to your brand, right? So if you show empathy towards them, and they will stay connected with you, right? If you stick with them through thick and thin, through the good times and the bad times. If you're a bank and you give people a loan and you lower your interest rates, and I mean, banks in South Africa have been giving bank holidays, etc., to same as insurance companies. They lowered some of their costs at the moment because people can't afford them and they don't want to lose these customers. Now, of course, some of that is profit based because that's why they're doing it. But if they can do that, to your point, authentically and really help people, they will have a customer for life.
Do you want the
I love
results
this. Yeah. Come, let's take a look at the results.
Yeah.
Sunif, please. Wow, 95%. And this is perfect, especially during this time where I think people are spending less. The flow of that particular value called money is moving very much slowly. I think this is time for us as perhaps organizational leaders, HR leaders, to really rethink and reinvent ourselves, isn't it? To really offer that value to your employees, like what Robert mentioned a while ago, that whole employee experience. This is really a good time.
Absolutely. I think I'm going to try and ask, my question to Robert. I'm just mindful we have only 15 minutes to go, and we have a fair amount of excitement on the chat box with lots of questions for Robert. And this would be really unfair if we hog it all up, Daryl. We got to be able to allow the audience questions also to go through. So I'm just going to come to but this is something that has been nagging me from the time we kind of learned of Ubuntu as a philosophy, and I've kind of known of this for a while now, and I think linking the concept of Ubuntu to design thinking has been extremely fascinating, and all of us learn within the Design Thinkers Academy on an ongoing basis. So this has been absolutely incredible to know. I have a question for you. For those organizations that are under pressure to reinvent or to be able to drive innovation, so there are organizations that have committed to driving innovation and are trying to build cultures to be able to drive innovation. A lot of it is product innovation because the investments that are being made. There's also incubating of ideas, kind of cells that are created inside the organization. There are new ideas that are given funding within organizations. There are all kinds of programs that are constantly. There are design thinking groups or reinvention groups or problem solving groups that are doing something to be able to drive improvement and innovation in some form within the organization. My question to you is the concept of Ubuntu, do you believe it can take away the teeth from innovation remaining competitive? And what I'm asking again, and I know I'm going back to the concept of competitiveness because it's so deep rooted in the mindset. And I'm just wondering for those organizations that are trying to pursue this under pressure, which is they have to come up with ideas to remain differentiated. They have to come in and perhaps, imitate an idea that is already out in the market, whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's a Me Too strategy, whether it is, coming up with something differentiated in the market, whatever it is that the organization is attempting to be able to drive. Do you believe the Ubuntu philosophy will take away the teeth from the competitiveness that you want, because you want to go in there and surprise the customer, and you want to go in there and look edgy in the market? I mean, if you kind of bring in this philosophy of humanism, I don't know how much of that competitive teeth get sort of blunted in your pursuit of wanting to be all encompassing. And if you really live the value of we are because I am because of you, does it kind of take away this edge that we will go out there? And you do see the organizations that are succeeding by being innovative is that they surprise the customer with what it is that they found out that the customer really needs. And suddenly the customer starts discovering that they did indeed need all of this. Maybe not all of it, but and I'm now referring to the Apple products and so on, is that, actually learn what I was actually needing. And it's now making me more effective because, or it's making me more impactful because I now have features or services that are available to me that I didn't even really know that I really needed. But now that they're available to me, it improves my quality of life. So I'm so impressed with whoever is offering this to me that I remain sort of, committed to this particular service provider or organization. So I'm just wondering, in a world like this, where you want to surprise the customer, you want to bring in something edgy, that you want to be able to let the customer's quality of life improve, how does Ubuntu really kind of, how does it allow you to sustain this competitiveness?
Robert, your microphone is not connected. Are you okay? No. Well, actually, okay. While you're repairing your kind of connection. Dr. Sujaya, that's a very, very interesting question. I ask myself that question as well. As we do discovery, as we go out and prototype some of the ideas that we have, are we gonna lose the edge? Are we gonna, slowly release that information and let out that whole element of surprise? And that might probably, in a sense, affect the value of the product when it's launched, or potentially even affecting the demand of the product when it's launched, or the service. Well, the real question I really ask, if the product and the service really anchors itself on one or two of that values that is easily replicated, then the quality of that product really deals with only one or two values, maybe. Then the question here lies, should we really look deeper into the product? I think this was brought up a while ago just now, right? Where technology first versus human first, right? And I think that was really very interesting. Should we be considering what really makes that pain in that individual and that stakeholders that we're trying to address, and really address it first, and then using technology to kind of systemize it, maybe? Robert, are you okay? No.
No,
No, we're not getting
really.
it.
Yeah, okay. He's going to try and fix that. And I think meanwhile, let's use this break for an audience poll, right? So
Yes.
I know that we are heading towards the end, but Sunit, the fourth audience poll, if you can try and bring that forward. Do you agree? Do you agree COVID-19 crisis is an incredibly opportune time to imbibe and live the philosophy of Ubuntu? And I know there are socially desirable answers to this question, but we're going to open that up by being able to bring one or two of you into the discussion to be able to tell us why you believe that the COVID-19 crisis is such an incredibly opportune time to be able to start imbibing this. When I saw Robert's slide, which he picked from the World Economic Forum, which spoke about the fourth industrial revolution and the fifth industrial revolution. If you look at the features of the fifth industrial revolution, you can see that COVID-19 can almost accelerate you to the fifth industrial revolution, because we've already got all the ingredients to be able to fast forward. So it is indeed, an accelerator in so many ways. But do you believe that? Do you agree that this is indeed an incredible opportune time to imbibe and live this philosophy of Ubuntu? Let's get the responses up, Sunit.
I love that thought, Dr. Sujaya.
Yeah.
Right,
but you still have
I really feel that Ubuntu does have a place in organizations, in governments, in organizations, and in society. I think that we all, given what's happening with COVID-19, have the opportunity to reassess our own humanness. And from a design thinking point of view, that there's a strong resonance between design thinking and the values and principles of Ubuntu. I do feel that this notion of interconnectedness, of teamwork within the organization, of servant leadership, of creating the conditions for our employees to work better as teams, to experiment and to try new things with the customer in mind, with this notion of how can we make a more welcoming and interconnected organization, an open organization, open to change, open to adaptation, and open to the needs of our customers. We are then able to remain relevant in society. And that is also about establishing a common purpose, a common set of values, and by co-creating a common purpose and a common set of values with the people in the organization, we're then able to stay relevant to society itself, and in that way create a more harmonious ecosystem. So, I think those are the main messages. Unfortunately, because Zoom dropped off, I can't see any more of those questions. But I'd just like to thank everybody for coming online and being part of this platform. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you again.
Yes. Thank you, Robert, and thank you, everyone. Daryl, any final words before we say goodbye to them?
Well, thank you very much again, Robert. For those of us who want to connect with Robert, you might just want to drop an email to Dr. Sujaya or the team that had emailed you earlier on. And of course, connect to us via LinkedIn as well as the other social media platforms. Keep in touch. We will have more coming up. Yes, Dr. Sujaya?
Yes, absolutely. So, watch this space for more. And I think this was an incredible conversation and dialogue that Robert Bloom has set off for us. Never going to be enough time to be able to answer all questions, but thank you for posting them, all the effusive comments that we see here. Thank you for joining us here today. Watch this space for more. We will keep the conversation on leadership and design thinking going right through. So thank you, everybody, and goodbye. Have a nice day and stay safe, everyone.